From my first ever Sharpied clone troopers back in 2008 to custom minifigures for showcases like Avengers Infinity War, I have made hundreds of custom LEGO minifigures over the last 10 years, and whenever I'm asked which one I think is the best, it's such a broad and general question that I usually find it difficult to answer. That is, of course, until I need a video to make and I figure, okay, it's time to narrow it down so I can do my first ever top 10 video. Real quick though, huge thank you to Jae Astral over on Patreon for joining as a customizing legend. Every time this happens, man, I don't even know what to say. Just thank you so much. As you can imagine, this list was a little bit difficult to compile, and there were quite a few figures that almost made the top 10 list but didn't, and I'll mention those at the end. Starting off, this one might surprise you, but number 10, Jessica Jones from the Defenders, was a fairly simplistic minifigure, but it's the face that I was so proud of. Originally, I had a painted face that didn't quite look like Kristen Ritter at all, but after revising the eyebrows and actually taking inspiration from the Clone Wars Padme minifigure of all things for the mouth, that ultimately wound up being one of my best painted faces. On top of that, finally being able to use that tiny tactical camera lens was pretty cool. Number 9, Killer Croc from Suicide Squad. The Suicide Squad minifigures I made back in 2016 still hold up as being some of the most, if not the most detailed minifigures I have ever made, and Killer Croc was no exception, taking an entire day to just paint on every single one of those scales. It wound up looking so cool, and I think so many of you were so happy with the end result at the time. And then also that design that I painted onto the back of the Cape Madness AR jacket, just some really tedious work. Number 8, Yellow Jacket, my best minifigure of 2015 from the first Ant-Man film. Say what you will about Darren Cross as a character, but the Yellow Jacket suit is pretty damn cool, and I think at the time, not to toot my own horn, but I think I did one hell of a job with the paintwork on that figure. Wound up looking exactly how I wanted it to, making use of that fantastic Yellow Jacket helmet that LEGO put in their set at the time with the trans yellow visor, adding my own Yellow Jacket like eyes and ventilation to the front. I think I was able to do that helmet justice, along with the stinger apparatus made up of various LEGO pieces that were all glued together with various layers of paint then applied over the top of them. That minifigure definitely still holds up to this day. Number 7 goes to Yondu Udanta from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Originally, the one I made in 2014 was a little bit too dark of a brown, and the skin tone was a little bit too light of a blue, so being able to take a second crack at the character in 2017 was super great. This one being a personal favorite amongst a lot of my friends. I used a lot of different 3D elements all over the painted and modified Cape Madness trench coat, the golden arrow actually being taken from the Minimates figure this time, the modified fin from the original LEGO set. On top of that, the painted beard, the highly detailed torso and set of legs. It was one hell of a minifigure that I'm still super proud of. Next up, number 6, going to a more recent minifigure, the Iron Man Mark 50 suit from Avengers Infinity War. Definitely a game-changing minifigure when we're discussing my custom Iron Man suits, because for the longest time, I would constantly repurpose the Amazing Armory Mark 7 chest piece for every Iron Man suit that I made practically, and it just wasn't working anymore, which is why I opted for a very minimal amount of sculpting on the chest and also the arms for the shoulders. On top of that, all of the painted detail through the process of selection to paint on as much of that detail that you see on the actual nanotech suit as I possibly could. And on top of that, the help that I received from my buddy Andrew Vu over at AV Figures, he made the air flaps, designing them in Illustrator, cutting them out with a laser cutter machine thing. It was amazing and really topped off the figure as being the best Iron Man suit that I've ever made, hands down, thanks to his help. And this will be a stand-in for my Avengers 4 showcase next year. Number 5 goes to Killmonger from Black Panther, a figure that I wanted to make way before Infinity War but didn't have time to, looped back around and made another Black Panther cowl, painted all of that gold detail and the very subtle camouflage pattern running throughout the entirety of it. This is is definitely one of the coolest figures I have ever made, and easily one of the most detailed figures that I have made this year. So proud of how N'Jaka turned out. The number 4 spot, going back to Avengers Infinity War with the Iron Spider suit. This was also a pretty intense painting process, as you can imagine, using the same metallic red color that I used on the Iron Man Mark 50 as a base for the Iron Spider suit, then painting all of the webbing on top of that. As you can imagine, it's an incredibly tedious process, but believe it or not, was slightly easier this time around, considering I now had the experience of already attempting webbing like this with my Civil War Spider-Man a couple years back. But of course, what made this figure even more unique was the repurposing of the Mini-Mates Iron Spider pincers, which were compatible with LEGO minifigures, and after modifying the neck brace on it and taking, I think it was 7 or 8 hours to paint the actual pincer arms themselves, I managed to put together what I definitely consider to be easily my best Spider-Man minifigure to date. And hey, hopefully sometime in the near future I'll be able to make the time to make the Spider-Man PS4 suit, or maybe even just the Stark Tech suit. I think those two minifigures to go with the Iron Spider figure would definitely be awesome, but right now it is just wishful thinking. Now already moving into the top 3 figures that made the list. You probably expected him to be number 1. The Mad Titan Thanos, the big purple guy, is actually number 3, because even though during a couple streams I did on Instagram where I said Thanos was probably my favorite minifigure I've ever made, when I really stopped to think about it, I kind of came to the realization that even though Thanos turned out exactly how I wanted him to, the head, the likeness to Josh Brolin, finally making the Infinity Gauntlet exactly how I wanted to, the rest of the big fig and all of the work that went into it over the course of a month on and off, it is still one of the best minifigures I have ever made. Some of my best work, but not my most detailed work, which is why these next 2 minifigures are actually just barely in front of him. But I cannot emphasize just how proud I am of my Thanos big fig from Avengers Infinity War. And one of those detailed minifigures taking the number 2 spot, the Joker from Suicide Squad. This was a painting process that really tested my ability as a customizer back in 2016. Again, not to toot my own horn, but I've been doing this for a while. I think that I could probably paint just about whatever I wanted, because after successfully painting on the damage tattoo, the little star next to the painted likeness to Jared Leto, all of the painted tattoos on top of the painted muscles, the highly detailed paint job all throughout the modified and painted Cape Madness trench coat. I don't know how many times I'm saying painted right now, I lost track. All of the bat symbols on the legs. This figure was insane to make, and honestly to this day, 2 years later, I wonder if I would still be able to do it again. But finally, number 1, the minifigure that I currently believe is my best work. Another throwback to 2016, once again with Suicide Squad, Harley Quinn, painting the likeness to Margot Robbie. Was, I think at the time, the best face I had ever painted, and one of the best faces I've still ever painted to this day. The shading of the blue and red on her 2 ponytails, the painted design on the back of her metallic blue and red modified Cape Madness AR jacket, the text and detail painted on the front of the torso along with the tattoos at the bottom, the belt with that dotted pattern running around all 4 sides of the belt piece, the painted bat, the little squiggly lines that I painted all throughout to resemble the text on her bat, and I low-key squeezed in MGF on the bottom of the bat, hashtag no regrets. But even on top of all of that, what was the most challenging part of making Harley was by far the legs, painting on all of the tattoos, and then the heel design wrapping around all 4 sides of the legs. It already sounds like an intense process, but then the fishnetting on top of that. Oh my god, this was probably to this day, once again, some of the most tedious paint work I have ever had to attempt. It was an insane process that, like I said, to this day, I am still so proud of, and that is why I think Harley Quinn from Suicide Squad is the best minifigure I have ever made, and that is my current top 10 list. It is definitely subject to change. I mean, like I said just a few weeks ago, I was still convinced that it was probably Thanos, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized the 2 best minifigures that I have made are definitely the duo of Jared Leto's Joker and Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn. And as promised, the figures that came very close to making this list: Daredevil from the Defenders, Vulture from Spider-Man Homecoming, Teenage Groot from Avengers Infinity War, Deadshot also from Suicide Squad, Spider-Man from Civil War, Master Chief from Halo 5 Guardians, Apocalypse from X-Men Apocalypse, and X-23 from Logan. Logan. Those are all some of my favorite figures as well that would easily also be on a top 20 list, just not necessarily the top 10. So that's it for my first top 10 video. This is not going to be a regular thing, but like I said at the start, I kind of wanted to get a video out for you guys while I do continue to work on the new showcases celebrating the 10-year anniversaries of Star Wars, the Clone Wars, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Right now, I've been posting preview photos of Anakin over on my Instagram, and on top of that, regular progress updates of both him and the Iron Man Mark 1 for my customizers over on Patreon. So if you want to support the channel, definitely consider checking that out. But either way, I'm so glad I made this video for you guys while I continue to work on those. And yeah, man, I think that's it though. I don't have much else to add. Again, thanks for sticking around, and I'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye.